Hi, I'm Kirti Chintalapudi, and I'm excited to be on the Better Call Daddy podcast.
I'm your host, Reena Friedman Watts, and this is the Better Call Daddy Show.
Hey, this is Big Daddy, Wayne Friedman.
That's my grandpa. Grandpa, you ready for more daddy drama?
My dad is my number one hero and number one fan.
And I'm a pretty cool dude.
All right, season 4, baby, here we go.
More stories you're not going to believe.
And maybe you will after you listen.
5 stars.
5.5 stars, 2 thumbs up.
You are a pretty cool dude.
I love you, Mommy.
Don't stand on the table and damn the public. You'll get some words of wisdom to live by.
Here we go again. Better call Daddy.
You know what your problem is? You like me.
Yeah, I do. Each week, I interview a guest, share the stories with my dad, and then he weighs in at the end of every episode with his wisdom and wit.
Hey, Grandpa.
Everyone from influential players to inspirational fathers, and of course, controversial people.
Grandpa, my mommy's calling.
Creating that legacy one call at a time. And welcome to the Better Call Daddy Show.
Stay tuned.
Where's the music?
Better call Daddy cause he knows you best. Better call Daddy cause he's bringing the test. He sees possibilities. Such possibilities. Better call Daddy, he'll be by your side. Better call Daddy, you're the apple of his eye. He sees all that you can be. All that you can be.
My dad says today's guest sounds like we could be sorority sisters. I think I'm finally putting my Purdue Alumni connection hat on. He said it sounded like we had just come out of class, sat down, had lunch, and had a good time together. She's an engineer. She's bringing her dad's business to America, and I am wishing her a ton of success, and I hope that she starts her podcast soon. Kirti, welcome to the Better Call Daddy Show. Is there any story behind your name or significance?
That's a good question. Yes, there is. Kirti actually means fame. Fame, I would say, I like to think like leadership fame. And yeah, growing up with that name, I always felt like my destiny was to be famous in some way. I don't know if that'll ever be true, but yeah, I love my name. Especially because the stories my parents told me around it.
Okay, that's a great lead in. Tell me the stories they've told you about it. That's so cool. And I love that you're like embodying your name and that like you feel connected to what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I try to. My personality's always been like, I've been an introvert and I'm usually quiet in bigger settings, although I do really well when I connect one-on-one and can be extremely chatty when I'm comfortable with the person. But yeah, I think part of that with my parents is they always wanted me to get out of my shell. They always wanted me to speak up. I know my teachers growing up would always talk to my parents and mention that as a concern that I was on the quieter side. And so I think that the stories that they told me about my name and why they named me Kirti, what fame was to instill that confidence in me to speak up and be louder in a room.
I love that so much. And I have a daughter too that's soft-spoken.
Yeah.
But I see when she gets comfortable with her friends that she lets loose. So
Yeah.
I love that. And I've had a lot of introverts on the show. So it's interesting when people feel like they're an introvert, but then want to push themselves to get better at not being that way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of introverts are like this. They can switch depending on the environment they're in. I know when I get really technical or speaking about something that I'm really passionate about, I can be very extrovertish and speak up and participate in conversations. So I think it just depends on the environment you're in and how comfortable you are with it.
Yeah, I love that you said you can speak up around things that are technical because that would not be something I would speak up about, but that is very cool. And I feel like that's a good transition into you and I are both Boilermakers and you went to Purdue and you got to work on some cool projects where you got to demonstrate some technical wherewithal or
Yeah.
can you talk about some of the some of the projects that you worked on at Purdue? I even saw people gave you recommendations on LinkedIn around some of the work that you did, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So back at Purdue, the project you're talking about was in my master's, where I got to work with a medical devices packaging company, and they employed visually impaired people. And it was really cool because they invited us. It was a student slash like applied internship where we got to study their manufacturing process and improve it, taking into consideration like the accessibility challenges for visually impaired people. So, yeah, that was such an exciting project. I remember walking around the facility, and the manager had joked about watching your shins because there are people walking around with canes and you could get just whacked in the shin. But no, it was just incredible. The owner of the company was very passionate about this and wanted to give visually impaired people an opportunity to be independent and empowered and have jobs. Yeah, the medical devices we're talking about are like gloves and what else? I'm trying to think about just anything you would use for like surgical equipment for sanitary purposes. And yeah, we studied the assembly lines. We need to keep into consideration like how keep aisles clear, right, for a lot of the folks to walk and know where they're going. And then as far as like the assembly line and the process itself, which is what I studied in industrial engineering, is to understand like what the requirements of a particular process are and then improve it. So it was a really amazing experience. It was in Indianapolis, and we drove from West Lafayette to Indy every day. We were a group of two, and we worked together on that. Yeah.
That sounds like such a very cool project. I actually told my dad about it because he worked in manufacturing for his whole career. So I wanted to give him a little bit about your background. And in response to me telling him a little bit about that project, he said, "How do you come up with solutions for packaging strategies? How do you see things like through your lens that others don't see?"
It's just incredible with like visually impaired people to think that like their other senses are amplified because their sight is taken away, but the fact that they can still use their minds and study the process or like the actions linked to whatever that action is, and then go from there and just continue to do that without their sight is incredible. I definitely found that fascinating.
Did you learn anything about how to organize or see things differently? My dad said he wants your mythology.
Yeah. I would say organization is like a huge strength of mine. And I was incredibly impressed too, considering when your vision is taken away, you do need to, that becomes a very important aspect to make sure that you place things where they need to be placed so they can be, because with visual impairment too, they're just trying to remember where everything is and then access it from those particular locations. So concepts of like industrial engineering and Kanban, which is a Japanese concept too, of organizing things by vision, but then also by location becomes really important. And that was something that we did factor into our design as well to make sure that the people that were in charge of placing things that were needed for manufacturing were exactly where they intended to be. And there's a process to that.
How did you get so good at being an organized person?
I've always been super organized growing up. And I think it was, again, I got a lot of praise for it. I think people noticed that. I am a clean freak. And I would go into family members' homes and just for fun ask their permission to organize their stuff and just go organize things. It was just something I just like when things are where they're supposed to be. And that is a strength that is carried over into my choice to be an industrial engineer with process engineering or organization. That's incredibly important. But yeah.
You're welcome at my house anytime.
I would love to. I feel like that's a side business that I'd like to start at some point in the future is to go and organize homes like the home edit. If you've seen some of the episodes on Netflix.
I haven't, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's all about organization and I just love it so much.
Wow. Okay, that's crazy. Yeah, talk about how you went from undergrad to grad to doing these cool projects. And then what?
And then after graduation, moved to the Bay Area and started my career in the semiconductor industry. I worked at a company called Western Digital. When I joined, it was SanDisk and it got acquired by Western Digital, but they produce memory chips. And I got this really cool opportunity to be a part of a rotation program, an industrial engineering rotation program, and explore different aspects of supply chain and operations within the company. And so I started off as a program manager in new product integration, where they designed chips that would be released like 5 to 6 years from when they were being worked on. So, very early proof of concept stage with the chips. And it was really cool because it was just a whole new perspective that I had. I was very focused on working locally with teams, but then with this, we were responsible to work with factories overseas and in Malaysia and China. And so I would stay on late night calls and coordinate with them to get the status of some of the prototype builds that we were manufacturing in those factories. And I also I was not super technical in terms of the technology because as a program manager overseeing the efforts and coordinating everything, I still really enjoyed the aspect of working closely with engineers and understanding the design and the technology that went behind the memory chips. So that was really cool. It was a cool
And yeah, I love that. How did you get that opportunity? Do you remember when you graduated?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I did go through like the Career Center at Purdue. I think it was called Center for Career Opportunities,
I've been
CCO.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to learn about your time at Purdue too, by the way. But yeah, I did apply to a couple of jobs through CCO.
Did you go
Um,
through the file folders or?
oh my gosh, no, it was all online at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I went there a little bit earlier than you. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. But yeah,
They do
this
have a really good
opportunity.
network.
Yes, it actually did come through a personal reference or like a friend of a friend
Okay.
was hiring at SanDisk at the time. And I passed on my resume and he thought it was such a good fit for this rotation program. And so he did like an internal referral. And then I got the opportunity to interview. It was actually 9 interviews. They called it Super Day. It
I call
was
it super interview. My God,
Super
9
Day, yeah.
interviews? That's insane.
Yeah, they invited me onto campus and I'm trying to think, was it 9 was at Apple actually. This was 6, I think, but it was 6 back to back where they like assigned me a room and they had 6 interviewers come in back to back and ask me all sorts of questions. There were some that were like general interview questions that you would expect, some that were case study where there's a whiteboard in the back and they wanted me to draw out my response and explain some of the concepts. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking for sure, but very exciting when I heard that I got the opportunity.
It sounds exhausting.
Was in a way, but it was very relieving, like after the fact, just going through it and knowing that I was able to do it and got through it just fine.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for new grads on how to, especially, I just recently connected with some new grads and they're women in STEM, women in engineering. They were
Mhm.
even telling me that it's such a low number of women engineers in their graduating class. Did you find that to be true as well?
And that was true for me as well at Purdue. At any given time, I think I was one of 2 or 3 women in my classes, which, yeah, is really low. And
Yeah, I found that I was pre-med, but I switched my major to communications and
yeah.
broadcasting. But yeah, my science and statistics courses were definitely more men.
Yeah, we really need to figure out how to get more women in STEM and more women leaders in STEM. Because I do see that it's a low number. There are a lot of women engineers, but you don't really see them in leadership positions as much as you'd want to.
Did you always have that interest?
With being in STEM?
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was a chemical engineer and also a businessman. And growing up, I wanted to be just like him. I knew I wanted to be like growing up. When people ask me what I wanted to be, I would say chemical engineer. And if they ask why, because my dad was one. But then eventually, I realized, okay, it might not be chemical engineering, but it's going to be some kind of engineering, and I'll figure that out later. And industrial engineering is such a good pick because I didn't really have to commit to any particular industry because I didn't know where I wanted to work or what I wanted to do. But it was focused on process, and you need process anywhere really, not just in like engineering, but in business, in communications. And so I thought it was a really good profession to be in because I wanted to have that ability to just move to any industry, any kind of job that I would want to in the future.
Being around other engineers, did it at all influence the kind of work that you wanted to do or maybe how you wanted to label yourself?
That's an interesting question. I always had very different interests in that I knew I eventually wanted to be an entrepreneur or have a business of sorts. And so for me, going into engineering, it was always telling myself that I wanted to lay the technical foundation. Like I wanted to have the foundations in engineering, but not necessarily become like a subject matter expert in it necessarily, but just understand and have those foundations. So I always had the option to be technical if I wanted to. And so it was all about options and just making sure I wasn't locking myself into anything specific, but could always jump in and get technical if I wanted. Like with semiconductors, like I didn't really know about like semiconductor technology, but I knew about manufacturing and operations. And so it was easy for me to go in and learn about semiconductors through my job, but then focus on those other principles of manufacturing and supply chain.
Yeah, that makes sense. What did you learn about semiconductors?
Oh my gosh, that they're getting smaller and smaller every year. The technology is just fascinating, and it's crazy how much memory you can fit into a tiny little chip now. But there's just a lot that goes into like building and developing these chips too. You need engineers from several disciplines coming together. When I was at Western Digital, I worked very closely with hardware engineering, electrical engineering, and test engineering as well. And they all require very different skill sets, but come together to design these beautiful chips that enable all this data storage now.
Yeah. And how is that kind of translated into what you're doing now?
It's been a huge transition.
It all builds on itself, though, I feel like. You've got to take things
Yeah.
from each of these opportunities.
It does. I started in semiconductors because it was an opportunity that I got. Like I said, it was a rotation program, and it was perfect because I got to explore different aspects of the company. And that was really exciting for me. And I always wanted to build my own career before I joined my family business, which is also always been a dream. And that transition was huge because I was in semiconductors in Silicon Valley, and now I'm in oil and gas, very different industry. So I'm in that process right now of studying and understanding oil and gas, although I've grown up with this business, with my father's business, which is in oil and gas. But yeah, like going back to IE skills, organization, process engineering, it's very applicable to the family business now. Like we're in something called asset management. We do asset maintenance and materials management. And there's several foundations of like supply chain, spare parts management, and data management that are very applicable from what I've studied and all my experience, even at Western Digital, has been. So in that sense, I'm very thankful that a lot of the skills that I have been transferable and are very applicable to what I'm doing now.
I'm interested in what are the differences you're seeing between Silicon Valley and some of the travels that you're doing.
Yeah, oil and gas is very traditional. There's a huge emphasis on relationship building. It's very relationship oriented, and face to face interactions are valued extensively. Unlike Silicon Valley, where everything was done remotely. I had to work with factories in China or Malaysia, and I got that done from my desk in San Jose, and it worked out. But what I'm learning about oil and gas is that it's incredibly important to show up and be there in person. And you referred me to Mark LaCour's sales and marketing podcast, and that's been really helpful for me to validate some of these things as I transition from Silicon Valley to oil and gas. That yes, it is traditional, and that relationship building aspect is incredibly important.
And I think even creating content around what you're learning and who you're talking to and who you're meeting, then people in the industry notice that and they want to have conversations with you around that.
Absolutely. And that's really why I want to start my own podcast in exploring this industry, meeting people, asking them questions, and understanding what their journey has been all about in this industry.
Exactly. I just interviewed Dick Frost, and he is in the oil and gas industry in Canada. And he started his show around the oil and gas industry and then expanded it into the trades. But he too wanted to have conversations with other people in oil and gas to ask them what they're doing, ask them what they're learning, ask them how they got involved in the industry. And if you have a podcast and you have a platform, you can create a social media following, but also you can have conversations with people that you might not be able to have those conversations with otherwise.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be really helpful. And part of it for me too is just that curiosity. Like, I really do want to understand people's journeys, like what their experience has been like, and hopefully be able to learn a thing or two from that.
It's so interesting because there's so many different engineers, there's so many different parts of the job, and there's so many buzzwords.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, the acronyms. I feel like you can't escape that no matter what industry you get into. The semiconductor industry was filled with so many. We had an acronym library that I bookmarked and would refer to every single day. And I'm going to have to do that exact same thing for what I'm doing now, too.
But that even could be funny.
Yeah.
You could put music to that and read them all.
Oh my gosh. That could be a fun podcast episode.
100%. Like, I've seen so many creative things. Like if you have a love for LinkedIn, you could cut together a reel of really well done LinkedIn profiles, drop some of your favorite music under it, name something in each one of those, tag the people that are in the reel,
Yeah.
and then you've created content. You could do the same thing with acronyms. You could do the same thing with people in the industry that all have the same title but do different things.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that also leads into this challenge that I'm trying to navigate through with terminology, right? Across different countries. Because with oil and gas too, it's such a global industry. You have people from all across the world like traveling to other parts and sharing their expertise, right? So like in the Middle East, for example, the company that we work with, one of our clients is Shell, and Shell has a joint venture with the government of Oman, and it's called the Petroleum Development of Oman. But there are a lot of folks that come from Shell then and share their expertise and are working on projects. And so you have an immersion of two cultures, the Middle East and the UK or Dutch cultures. Yeah. And then there's all this terminology that's used. And then now I've noticed too in Texas, like you have a lot of folks from Australia coming in and that are a part of oil and gas. So you then start hearing some of those terms too. So I would love to have some kind of reference where I know like how that term translates in different cultures, like in the business aspect of it, and just understanding like what those definitions are.
I think that could be helpful, not just for you.
Oh, yeah.
You could be onto something here.
I'm sure a lot of people find value in that. It's actually a mapping exercise I'm doing for myself. But yes, I would love to share it once it's ready.
Yeah. Another question I wrote down is, are there cultural or industry specific adjustments that you are currently making?
Yeah, I would say the whole transition from semiconductors to oil and gas, like we've talked about. And then also it's been an adjustment for me to join my family business, really. Adjust back from like corporate life to a smaller business. Working with my dad has been very interesting. We have a very close relationship, but it's been interesting trying to navigate how to work together, be professional, but not necessarily let the personal aspects of it to creep into that professional relationship. That's been an adjustment, but really exciting too. I love working with him and just I've seen his passion growing up with all his hard work that he's put into the business, but also understanding the results of it now and seeing all that hard work that he's put into the business to fruition has been really amazing for me and very rewarding for me.
It must be rewarding. And I don't know, like it probably gives him honor that you're choosing to want to team up with him or to try to bring his business to America. What has that
Yeah.
conversation been like? Yeah.
It's my dad isn't a very emotional person, I would say. He might not necessarily express some of those things, but at the same time, we've definitely talked about it. He was incredibly excited for me to join the business. He did warn me several times that it might not be as like organized or perfect like I might have imagined it to be or fantasized it to be. And so he did a lot of prep work, I would say, to make sure that I was ready to come into this and be a part of it. And it's true, it has been challenging. I'm a person that thrives in structure and he understands that. And I like to have like strict schedules and a way of doing things. And it's not always going to be the case with business. You got to be flexible, you got to be adaptable. And it's something that I'm learning from him.
That's great. But also, you can bring your organizational skills. It sounds like maybe he could use a little of that.
Yeah, I won't say that as far as the work we do, of course, with the operations is very structured and very organized, but business itself isn't necessarily, right? It's all about risk. It's all about exploring new opportunities, building relationships, and you can't really structure that as much, which is why for me, like doing this podcast is a way where I'm like, okay, it's a thing that like gives me some structure, gives me some goals around relationship building or around networking. And yeah, it's just my way of bringing that aspect in again to say, okay, I can measure my progress in terms of the people I connect with and people I meet and things I learn through this. So yeah, but absolutely, he does appreciate those organizational aspects that I bring into like marketing, for example. We've never had formal sales and marketing ever. Not that I'm like a sales or marketing expert, but I do know there's aspects that you can structure around. You can have goals, you can have like sales targets and things like that, which our businesses in consulting, it doesn't have, like I said, a lot of the business that we get is word of mouth. It's from personal relationships. So we never really followed a structured marketing approach. So that's something that I'm working on where I do want to add in like a digital marketing aspects, having online campaigns, which I think can bring a lot of value. It's not something that they've explored. And so he's really excited that I am exploring these aspects for him.
Yeah, that's very cool. What are some of your other goals? Like some audacious goals that you would like to bring?
That's a good question. The business has been focused on oil and gas, but I would love to expand it to other industries.
Cool.
It's definitely a goal of mine. I want to make that happen. Contrary to oil and gas, I've been very passionate about sustainability. Back at Purdue, I was actually a part of this student organization called Boiler Green Initiative. And you could tell from the name, the whole goal was to spread awareness about sustainability and climate change and just educate people about it. I was actually the chair of the Green Roof Committee as a part of that group. And I went around campus talking to deans and other leaders on campus about putting up a green roof on their building because it would help with stormwater. So I do want to scale this business into more sustainable alternative energy as well, and to have such clients. So that's a goal of mine. And then not just energy, but also focus on pharmaceuticals and retail. There's tremendous opportunity for us there too.
Wow. I love that. I don't know if I saw that about the sustainability. That's very cool. Did you
Yeah.
get people excited about it?
I did. I made these like little chia pets with googly eyes, and I would put seeds in them, and then I would promote our group, our Green Roof Committee, by handing out chia pets. And I love doing that. I did that at Purdue. I also recycled at every single Purdue football game when I was there. The goal was zero waste, right? So
Wow.
divert like trash to recycling and sort the recycling. And so, yeah, that's something I did and I was very passionate about. I actually worked for the director of sustainability at Purdue as in an internship for 2 years, my junior and senior year too.
That is amazing. And there is a lot of trash at those football games. So that must
So-
have taken a while.
But it was also about like encouraging people to recycle their trash. And Purdue did a great job with also having like recyclable material, like spoons and forks and the containers and stuff. So it wasn't that hard to recycle. You just needed to go find a recycling bin and throw it in that bin. And yeah, so I really enjoyed that aspect of raising awareness on that.
How did that interest start?
Honestly, it started in high school back in Oman, where I participated in a lot of beach cleanups. And I was also a scuba diver. It's been a while since I've been scuba diving. I'd like to get back into it because I've been in California and I'm scared of the Pacific Ocean. And not just that, it's just too cold, unlike the Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea, where it's just warmer and more inviting. But I did go scuba diving quite often, and I would see plastic by corals. And some of the initiatives we did was also around volunteering and cleaning that up. And so that's where I would say my passion for sustainability started, or just my concern, rather, that we're just really polluting the environment and we need to be more responsible about that. Yeah. And so that's how at Purdue, too, when I did notice there were quite a few student organizations around these aspects, I made sure to join them and be an advocate for it there, too.
That's cool. Did you ever get involved at all in the windmills?
No, I didn't. I think that might have been a project that started like a while ago before. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think I ever figured out how to be involved with it.
Yeah, I tried to call. It's still something I feel like I have an interest in. My dad was interested in that too.
Yeah.
I should
it's so
reach out to
cool.
Purdue and see if I could just talk to somebody about that. I feel like that would be super interesting.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they'd connect you with someone that you can talk to.
Are you still involved at all with the university? Do you keep in touch with people from there?
Yeah, Purdue is just such a special place for me. And I do. I'm actually the president of the Purdue Technology Alumni Board, and it's our school's alumni board. Our mission is to connect students, current students, alumni, faculty, and the school itself with one another and increase engagement. So I do go back to Purdue twice a year. For our board meetings. And I also am a part of the alumni mentoring program. So I do mentor students that are close to graduation, and I really enjoy that. It is a way for me to stay connected with Purdue and give back.
I love that. How did you pick Purdue?
That is such a good question. This goes back to my dad again, where we're still deciding where I wanted to go to school. I'd applied to a bunch of schools in the US. I had relatives here, and that really encouraged me to explore going to college here. So applied to a bunch of different schools, and my dad and I actually toured several campuses together, him and I. And we made a fun trip out of it. I remember my mom was stuck back home with my sister, and they were super jealous. But yeah, so I went to University of Michigan, Purdue, Rochester Institute of Technology, UC Irvine, and UC Davis. And out of all the schools, I remember my dad was huge on decision making. Like he would he would force me to make a decision matrix for any decision I made in my life. And it was ranking all the factors that were important to me and like ranking that decision based on the factors that were important to me. And so I remember Purdue was like, it was very close to UC Irvine at the time in terms of rankings, but there's something in my gut about Purdue, I told my dad. It was just like, it made me feel like home or the closest to home that there was. And so, yeah, I ended up choosing Purdue. My dad really liked the school too. And so he loved all the schools. Like he felt like I couldn't really go wrong with any of those picks, but it came down to my gut. And I just had a feeling about Purdue. I just loved it so much. I loved campus. We visited around spring when it was just so beautiful and everyone was just happy biking around campus. And yeah, I don't know what to say. There's something that drew me to it, and it's the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Wow. That could be a commercial right there.
Yeah, it's just, I moved when I was 17, right? I moved
Me
away
too.
from, yeah, I think most
Wow.
of us did. And I moved like halfway across the world. And so it was such a huge decision. It was terrifying for sure. And I'm very close to my family. It's my mom, my dad, my sister, and I. And so it really impacted all of us, right, in a way, because I was the first one, the older sibling, the first one to do that. And so I remember it was like an adjustment period for my parents and my sister too. And then I was at Purdue trying to be strong and not call them and whine or cry because I miss them. And I would say like the first semester of freshman year was hard, but come spring semester, everything changed. I found my group of people, my best friends, they still are. And I just like started to really enjoy campus and my classes and just find my voice or my interests and figure out what I was really passionate about. And I think Purdue gave me that platform really to explore that, which is why I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up finding your voice and finding what you're passionate about because I honestly feel like I got that there too. Through
Yeah.
different opportunities. For me, it was walking into the radio station on campus, WBAA, and telling them that I wanted to work in radio and then them making an opportunity for me. And I did that for 2 years and I loved it. And then I ended up even getting like my best friend a job there too. And then,
My gosh. Did you ever work at the Purdue Exponent at all?
no, yeah,
Okay.
I just worked for the radio station, but I feel like I found my voice like through that opportunity.
Absolutely. That's incredible because that's like I've seen you with your podcast and it's amazing to think that was like the start of your journey and that's what inspired everything you've done after.
There was a woman who ran it. Oh man, I need to look up her name, but she was fantastic. And she gave me so much freedom to be creative, where she was like, okay, here's where all the news stories come across the AP Newswire, but feel free to edit them and make them your own. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
oh,
God.
that's cool. And then she just let me DJ and let me come in early or stay late and use the equipment to make air check tapes and record and have fun with it. It was a really special opportunity. And from there, I went to the alumni office that you're talking about and
Yeah.
found that WGN in Chicago was that there was an alumni connection there. And so
Right.
I actually went to interviews for WGN and then I didn't get the job, but then I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for interns
Oh
on
my,
that same interview in the same courtyard.
that is wild. That is wild.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing from your story too is like the importance of mentors and
Oh,
having that
yes.
person just like guiding you through it and the fact that your manager, that lady, gave you the freedom to explore like how you wanted to do the editing and everything. It's incredible. It's probably what inspired you to want to do more and explore it further.
100%. And there were a lot of teachers like that too. I feel like
Yeah.
Purdue had a lot of excellent teachers that I almost ended up minoring in psychology because I had such interesting, amazing, enthusiastic teachers teaching those classes that I took so many more psychology classes than I ever would have taken from the teachers that I had there that were teaching.
Isn't that amazing? I agree. For me, it was a particular professor too that I had, Dr. Stevens. Shout out to Dr. Stevens. A lot of people were intimidated by him. Really, he respected people that had the curiosity, wanted to learn, and had the discipline. But then I loved his teaching style. It was so different from other professors where I could truly see his passion with the subjects. He taught predictive maintenance, which could be a very dry class, but I just found it so fascinating and interesting, right? He taught this senior design class where we had to build and design a facility ground up, or like the concept rather, and it included like every aspect of like market research and like business aspects of it, but also like the technical engineering aspects of it. And again, like he just made it so exciting and interesting. And I ended up being a teaching assistant for both those classes in grad school. Yeah, if for me too, it was teachers that inspired me and just guided me along the way. So yeah, Purdue, going back to Purdue, it is a special place.
Yeah, I haven't been back really to visit. That's cool that you go there a couple times a year.
If you get a chance, you should. It's changed so much. There's new buildings, and there's like a Target on Chauncey Hill, if you remember, like where the bars were. And yeah, it's so different. The Memorial Union is completely renovated. And
Wow.
look, they've retained like the original, the structure and some of the traditional aspects of it, but it's very bougie now.
That's cool. That's cool. It's funny because now I have a junior in high school and we're starting to think about colleges. And I was like, I'm pretty sure like Purdue is a legacy school. They do
Yeah.
actually think about if a parent went there. Because I remember I had an uncle that went to
Oh my
Purdue. I
gosh.
put his name down on my application.
Oh, that's incredible. Like even now with my board, every single person that serves on the board is so passionate. There's something about Purdue alumni where I feel like it's not a forced thing. Like they want to give back. They genuinely care, and Purdue has truly made a difference in their lives. And I feel like just from hearing your story too, I feel like it did serve as like that foundation for your career.
Yeah, for sure. I am glad that I ended up there. I actually transferred to Purdue my junior year. So I was there my junior and senior year.
Okay.
But I am really glad that I made that change because I started off at a smaller school.
Mhm.
I was on a vocal music scholarship to the University of Charleston.
Cool.
Yeah, and I was a double major in sports medicine and vocal music. And I really wanted something bigger and more competitive. I felt like I went to a very competitive high school, and I met someone that was in the sports med program at Purdue.
Oh yeah.
He convinced me to switch.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I definitely did not do as much research as you, but I made out.
Oh yeah. It worked out.
Yeah. I'm interested too, is being a part of the university and like being a part of the board, do you think that could help you in growing your business here and maybe utilizing some of those connections further to help you maybe with mentorship or with hiring or with expanding into other industries like you mentioned you were interested in doing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great networking opportunity. You meet a lot of people that are equally passionate about your school. And so that's an immediate, like an easy connection, right? And yeah, I've had conversations with several alumni about exploring opportunities further. And I could see that being extremely helpful in the long run too, with building my business for sure. Those connections are really valuable. And it's as I move to Texas too, I'm getting ready to move to Austin soon. I did actually tap into my Purdue network and ask for advice in terms of where to live and what advice they have in terms of moving to Austin. And it's definitely a community that I lean into often, and I'm going to continue to lean into as I build my business.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I need to tap into that more. We should definitely talk about how I can get
I
more
would
involved.
Yeah, I would love to make some introductions and facilitate that for you.
I'm like, there has to be other opportunities where I could maybe give back, or maybe I could reconnect with the radio station or something like that would be
Yeah. Even
so
the like
cool.
I'm wondering if I know there's an alumni board for education, which is what communications comes under.
Yeah.
I think so. But yeah, I do actually know the engagement officer for Purdue for Life that helps run that board. So I would love to connect
Interesting.
with her.
Yeah, that would be so cool. I'm definitely interested in that. It's just so interesting. Like I wouldn't have even thought that maybe that's something that I should tap into more. It's funny, my husband went to Berkeley and he gets all these reminders in the
Yeah.
mail about Berkeley meetups and stuff. And you get so involved in like your work and your family, and you don't even think that could lead to really interesting opportunities.
Yeah, I strongly encourage looking into that because it's incredibly helpful and then also really nice to be involved. One of the things I enjoy the most is about going back to Purdue and doing the tailgates. They're so fun and you meet people through that too and you make connections. And yeah, it's a great way to be involved and connect with other fellow Boilermakers.
I know that we're like coming up on the hour. I do want to know just a little bit about Oman. What was it like to grow up there? What did you notice like when you first came to America, the differences that come to mind?
Oh my God. It is so different there. It's a beautiful country, very hot, desert weather, beautiful terrains like with the ocean and mountains. And it's just a very quiet place. Like the population is about, I want to say 3 or 4 million and like in the main city. So it's a much smaller country compared to even being just in Indiana and at Purdue. Purdue was a lot for me. But yeah, growing up, it was just very quiet life. I was actually born in Abu Dhabi and lived in Dubai until like fourth grade. And I remember moving from my dad and mom were moving from Dubai to Oman for the business. And my sister and I were so upset. We didn't want to leave Dubai because Dubai was this like, it was just growing back then, but it was just a really fun and happening place to be in. And we loved our school. And so transitioning to Oman meant it was just a much quieter, boring life, I would say, back then, or that's how I would describe it. But I'd grown to love it through high school. Like I said, I went scuba diving a lot and did beach cleanups. There's a wonderful community that we had around. And so it's just such a beautiful country. Anytime I go back there, I was just there for a couple of days and it felt like it always feels like a resort, just like a quiet, like the second you get into the airport and you look around, you're just like, where are all the people? It's just such a quiet place, but beautiful. My trip just recently too, I spent most of my time in India. So flying back from India to Oman was such a like culture shock, right? Because with India, it's like heavily populated. And with Oman, it's just this like gorgeous quiet retreat to fly into. So it's always nice to be back home.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And also, what did you learn on your trip to India?
Oh my gosh, a lot. So in India particularly, so with Hoffen Tech, my company, I have a software development team. And they are working on a product to automate a lot of the work that we do. And I'm really excited about it. My goal was to work with them, see, how the project is coming along, make some improvements and maybe some changes to our strategy as well. It was really nice to be with my team. And here too, I do calls daily to check in on the progress and make sure things are going okay. But it just felt so different to be there in person and connect with everyone. And I feel like I was able to get so much more done than I would being here. And that was one aspect. The other is I got to celebrate Diwali for the first time in India. Because again, growing up in Oman, it was quieter. We celebrated as just a family of four and then maybe met with some neighbors too. But being in India and just seeing all the festivities, and it was just incredible. It was an amazing experience.
I want to know like how you celebrate that. Tell me about the holiday. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's actually one of my most favorite Hindu festivals. And I grew up Hindu. It's the Festival of Lights, and it celebrates the triumph of good over evil. And so you'll see like all the homes are fully lit up with little diyas or like candles, and there's firecrackers, fireworks, all sorts of things. Although now with growing concerns of pollution, like people are trying to be more respectful and mindful of not bursting crackers that could cause more pollution. But yeah, I was really thrown off by it. I think for 7 days leading up to Diwali, I would hear like random crackers go off and get startled. And I was just really not used to that. But I just love the festive vibe. It felt like Christmas, really, where like people show up, they give you like Indian sweets, exchange sweets, and they have fun events. I had my entire office dress up in Indian attire to celebrate and get into the festive spirit. And I really enjoy doing that too. I'll look for any excuse to wear my Indian clothes and dress up. So that was really nice. And I find that people also get very like goal oriented around the festivals. Like it's like the beginning of the year, like a new year, I would say too. It was really nice to hear from my team and reflect on what we had accomplished so far and all the goals that we have for the upcoming year as well. But yeah, it was just such a unique experience for me to be in India and celebrate this festival. And I
I
learned
love that. Sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
Oh, no, I was saying, like, I learned a lot more about it too, like the stories behind the festival. And there's so many different versions that this is another thing that my sister and I are wanting to explore about our culture, where like we've celebrated these festivals for so many years and like we've heard like our parents share some stories on it. But there's so many other versions. There's so many Hindu gods, and there's yoga philosophies that tie into it. And so my sister and I are wanting to explore that. And we're talking about starting a podcast on the Hindu mythology and exploring the stories behind it.
Hey, once you start one, it's a lot easier to start a second one.
We actually did record an episode already on
Yay.
that and research the story around Diwali, actually, because we were just so inspired by the spirit. And we had some family members sharing stories too. So we recorded an episode just reflecting on it and sharing other stories that we found online and bringing it all together. So I'm really excited. I still need to edit it and figure that out, but I'm really excited to put it out and record more on Hindu mythology.
That is so cool. I think this is me, but I think that you can have your personal interests and your business interests intersect.
Yeah,
Do you think so?
I do think so. And it's a future goal of mine for sure, where with my family business and what I'm doing right now, like it's one aspect of my life, but I would love to find some synergies around that and all of the like my personal like lifestyle choices too with yoga and being more interested in mythology, like Hindu mythology and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. And it's something that I really do want to explore. And I'm sure the time for it will come. Maybe not right now, but eventually, for sure.
What does your dad say about that? Or maybe we should ask mine.
I would like to ask your dad about that. But I also do feel like I just have so many interests. And I do try, right now, I'm trying to focus on the business and venturing into the oil and gas industry and learning about that. And that should be my focus, really. But eventually, I feel like once I do find my way, there will be a point when I do want to pivot and focus on the personal aspects and hone into that a little more.
Very cool. Let people know how they can connect with you and who you're looking to connect with. Purdue grads, oil and gas people.
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Kirti-C. I did have a question for your dad.
Cool. Yes.
So my question, I want to hear about what his favorite part is with collaborating with you on your podcast, his daughter. That's special for me too, because I'm working with my dad and I love it, but I also want to hear what he thinks of it. So that's one aspect with your podcast. The other question I have is, what valuable lesson or advice does he have that he's learned about networking over the years?
Great questions. I love that. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say. What do you think your dad's favorite part about working with you is?
That's a really good question. I'm his daughter and he loves me, so that's got to be his favorite part. But no, he has mentioned that he admires my qualities with organization and perfection, although it can be a weakness. He does really value that. And he's seen that with some of the work that I've put out with him as well. And so he really loves that and he sees it as a strength.
I love that. I can't wait for us to put this together and share it with him.
Yeah, I can't wait to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've heard from my mom. Now, let's switch it over to Grandpa.
Our episode with Kirti is really a wonderful lesson of communication, and something that she asked, what I'm most proud of is really the way the show has gone and matured. You get to realize a lot of the experiences of other people and see the good things that happen, but also you've seen adversities and things across a whole range of subjects where you're able to, and yours truly as well, where we're learning and improving our wisdom rating because we're getting some wonderful communications that you're able to do hands-on in a very nourishing way, and where everybody is able to communicate back and forth, where we're all very down to earth and real. And that quality is very rare in today's society because there's so much plastic and manipulation and foolery that's out there. It's nice to be able to cut through all of that bullshit and be able to share our experiences. The irony is that's what she's asking about, and that's what she's really practically doing as well. And what I loved about it is that she doesn't blow up any bridges behind her. She takes all of her experiences and builds on it. And that's what all of us need to do. All of us need to be able to show that our experiences that we have are adaptable for the future. Okay? It's not where we do one thing and that's all we're limited in doing. She wants to be able to blend her education and her skill set that she was able to obtain in a totally different industry, but realizes that there are so many similarities in running a business and in communicating with people that she wants to be able to build on it. What's interesting is that AI and working with semiconductors and getting chips to be able to handle all this improved and increase of information, that's all wonderful. But you also have to be adaptable to think on the fly. And we don't want to be robots. We want robots to help us, but we still want to be people. We still want to have hands-on communications. And in the oil and gas industry, or in the lighting industry that I was in, we had very sophisticated engineers making lights, okay? Just like very sophisticated engineers are needed in a cross current of making these chips work. But going to a trade show and going and visiting with customers and visiting with the public on their needs and wants and how the future is developing, you have to be up to date with all of that kind of stuff. And you have to be able to get along with people and be able to hear what other people have to say. And she wants to do that. She wants to not only be able to use technology, but she also wants to have high communication skills that are not just robotic, but where they are real and where she can give people a chance to communicate with her. And that's why she not only loves the idea of participating in your podcast, but was very enthusiastic of being maybe part of someone else's podcast or making a podcast of her own. And she still keeps in touch with the university. She keeps in touch with the people that she used to work for. She and wants to be able to take all these skills that she's developed and communication skills that she's developed as well, and be able to tone in on helping her family's business as well. She's definitely falls in the camp of being a very good daddy's girl. And that's what is a very important message that our show shows, how important it is for a father and daughter to be able to show that there can be a real connection for legacy, okay, where you can do your own thing, you can have your own skill set, you can have your own path, and yet we can still figure out a way to do it all together.
You said it perfectly. I was going to say you can be independent and stand on your own 2 feet, and you can still tie your legacy to me.
Absolutely. Maybe when this Vegas show comes up in lighting show, I just talked to Vic, where maybe he would go with his wife. Maybe Maureen would like to come, where he could see some nice shows and everything, and see if we couldn't hustle a little bit at the show. And I think maybe you and Will should come too.
Thanks for listening. Now I think I'm going to go call my dad.
I'll say goodbye and see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to the Better Call Daddy Show. Join us weekly for new episodes and more daddy wisdom.
Better Call Daddy is good advice always.
And love you, Grandpa, and love you, Mommy.
That's so cute. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You can also find special episodes on my YouTube channel, and you can listen on Apple Podcasts,
On Good Pods.
Spotify, Amazon Music, Alexa, or your preferred podcatcher. That's a wrap for now.